Imagine training your entire life to defend the greatest empire on earth, only to end up in chains, humiliated and forgotten like a piece of broken equipment. Sounds extreme. It's not. What you're about to see is the most brutal truth behind Rome's military glory, a secret no one dares to talk about. While generals were celebrated in marble, thousands of captured Roman soldiers faced horrors far worse than death, slavery, ritual sacrifice, and public humiliation. They fought for Rome, yet were treated as if they never existed. Today, we uncover that hidden reality. From barbaric rituals to slave auctions, you'll learn what really happened to the Roman soldiers who lost, and how Rome erased their suffering from history. But before we dive into these tales and curiosities of the Roman Empire, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and hit the bell icon. That way, you won't miss any of our videos packed with secrets and surprises about ancient Rome. So can you feel the weight of this cruel surrender? Stay tuned, because in the first chapter, you'll witness the deadly silence that marks the end of Roman resistance. The moment of capture, the end of resistance. At the battle's peak, the earth trembled under the clash of shields and spears. The sky, tinted by war's dust, muffled the shouts of command. The Roman legion, trained to move as a perfect formation, saw its lines break when an unexpected Carthaginian strike ignited their left flank. The standard, once the symbol of Mars's invincibility, toppled into the mud, signaling the collapse of military cohesion. Officers tried to restore order, but the siege was swift and merciless. Under orders from an anonymous Carthaginian chief, the legionaries found themselves surrounded, spears raised, bows tipped, and within moments the cry of "Surrender!" replaced the clash of arms. For each man, surrender meant more than the end of the fight. It meant the denial of a lifetime devoted to Roman discipline and pride. The captured Roman legionary, hardened by years of marching and the weight of his gladius, felt his courage slip away as he realized no rescue was coming. Blood dried in the grooves of his shield, his heart pounded with urgent fear. In every familiar face, he saw his own disbelief reflected. Comrades who, moments before, fought side by side now raised their hands in plea. Then, the noise stopped. A deadly silence fell over the valley. There were no more orders to follow, no camp to return to. The battlefield became an open-air prison, and every cry of pain blended with the cold wind. Those plains, once the stage for conquest, now witnessed the burial of Roman hope. Can you feel the weight of that deadly silence? Wait to discover what happened in the dungeons where these men were confined. The hidden side of Roman defeat. Despite banners raised in triumph, Rome bore silent wounds. On the Mesopotamian steppes, Parthian soldiers under Surena's command annihilated entire cohorts at Carrhae, 53 BCE, and in the Teutoburg forest, Germanic. Chieftains capitalized on the counterattack to capture whole legions. These events never made it into the arches of victory or official reports, but the evidence lies beneath the soil. Piled bones, mass graves, and spears embedded in makeshift tombs. Official chroniclers, eager to exalt Rome's power, omitted these grim chapters. Modern archaeologists, however, have uncovered extreme marks of violence at little-studied sites, proving that thousands of legionaries never returned home. The shallow graves, often without even a simple inscription, reveal the fate of men who were once the pride of the Republic. For the survivors, the humiliation was as sharp as physical pain. Knowing that brothers in arms were turned into war, trophies, impaled on posts or displayed in foreign markets, wore down any legionary spirit. The humiliation of Rome was not just symbolic. It echoed in the campaign tents, where the fear of being taken alive competed with the terror of instant death. These silent defeats exposed a paradox. An empire that dominated the Mediterranean could celebrate victories yet failed to protect all its sons. Each unnamed grave spoke louder than any marble tomb, reminding us that behind the legend lay blood and bones buried under the weight of official silence. Do you think Rome accepted this stain quietly? Stay tuned to see how enemies turned defeat into a spectacle of horror. Immediate execution, the fate of many. On many battlefields, capturing Romans was seen as weakness, so enemy commanders opted for swift massacre. Immediately after surrender, groups of legionaries were lined up under gnarled trees or along hastily. Dug trenches and a hail of blades, spears and arrows ended their lives in an instant. At the Battle of Carrhae, 53 BCE, sources suggest the Parthians, seeking vengeance for Crassus's defeat, mercilessly executed hundreds of wounded legionaries, leaving no chance for reprisal. Archaeologists have found shattered bones and arrowheads lodged in skulls, proof of a surprise attack that spared no one. In the dense forests of Germania, tribal leaders reinforced their power with ritualized slaughters. Blood flowed through tree roots, forming red rivers that warned allied tribes of their might. It was a bloody message to Rome. Here, there is no surrender or ransom. For those few who survived the initial onslaught, the trauma of hearing comrades' screams as they sought refuge among roots and branches remained. Immediate execution served a dual purpose: eliminate enemies and sow terror among the remaining legions. It was not just death, it was a message. Each falling blade carried away not only a body, but also the hope of those still fighting for Rome. What if the blade that separates you from death was also a message of terror? Stay tuned to understand the torture that preceded the final blow. Psychological torture before death. In many Germanic and Celtic tribes, victory didn't end with a fatal stroke, but with prolonged terror. After capturing legionaries, tribal chiefs confined them in shallow pits or damp ditches dug into the earth. There, without sunlight, prisoners huddled in the stench of decay, hearing the screams of comrades executed just steps away. For hours, sometimes days, each man was forced to witness the collective ordeal. Wrists shackled in chains, they watched as a fellow soldier was dragged from the pit, struck by hatchets or pierced by ceremonial spears. Chroniclers like Tacitus described tribal musicians beating ritual drums to heighten the torment, creating a macabre contrast between rhythmic beats and the captive's sobs. In that claustrophobic setting, time crawled. A legionary used to endless marches felt panic rise with every drumbeat. Deprived of hope, his mind turned every shadow into a threat and every whisper into a harbinger of death. Many succumbed to sheer panic before hearing the final clang of the sword. Fear's psychosis was as deadly as the blade. When the moment came to kill, Roman honor was already dust. That soldier, who months before had marched with pride, now had no face or name, only the echo of his agony in the mud. Can you imagine enduring that deafening silence of pain? Get ready, because next you'll see how some escape this hell only to face an even crueler fate. Slavery, from glory to commodity. For those spared by the blade, freedom proved an illusion. As soon as captured Roman legionaries raised their hands in surrender, they were shackled in groups of 10 to 20 and marched, exhausted, wounded, and humiliated, to slave markets set up in enemy camps and towns. Parthian, Germanic, and Carthaginian merchants examined each man like merchandise, assessing muscle tone, teeth, recent wounds, even hints of discipline in their posture. Imagine the pride of bearing the legion's aquila reduced to a bargaining chip. Men who once marched to trumpet calls now faced foreign buyers whispering bids, comparing battle scars to marks of quality on a prized horse. The young and sturdy won privileged posts on grand estates, forced to build walls, roads, or tend vineyards under relentless whips. The wounded, elderly, or those deemed undisciplined fetched meager prices, sent to quarries, deep mines, or distant plantations where few survived the first winter. Each clink of iron chains reminded them of Rome's fall. The shift from glory to servitude left scars as deep as battle wounds, bodies exhausted, spirits crushed by the knowledge they had become goods. Ancient records and archaeological finds confirm markets teeming with ex-legionaries sold to fuel the war economies of Rome's enemies. You ever wonder how this single event shaped an empire's destiny? Drop a like now and help us keep bringing these stories to light. Have you imagined your fate decided at an auction block? Stay tuned to discover how human life became a cold number. The value in the human market. In the post-surrender markets, each captured legionary carried a price reflecting his physical strength, skills, and youth. Under watchful eyes of Parthian, Germanic, and Carthaginian merchants, seasoned warriors became prized tools. Master siege engineers and military medics, able to rebuild fortifications or treat wounds, were fought over like rare gems. Sent to villas and palaces, they worked in relative comfort, learning new techniques, receiving regular food rations, even proper clothing, all to maximize their utility. A legionary with battle scars and a reputation for discipline could fetch a small fortune in gold, his expertise guaranteeing profit for the buyer. Conversely, those with unhealed wounds, signs of trauma, or visible fear sold for pennies. They ended up in salt mines, quarries, or remote plantations where the scorching sun and backbreaking labor sapped their lives within months. Many didn't survive the next winter, succumbing to cold, sickness, or capricious overseers. This trade in human flesh laid bare the gap between Rome's civilized rhetoric and war's brutal reality. The honor these legionaries died to defend, the notion of an empire bringing peace by the sword, shattered before the cold logic of supply and demand. Every tightened chain and every auctioneer's hammer stroke reminded them, for these men, ideals no longer mattered, only their price tag. What if your life's value depended on a merchant's glance? Brace yourself for the grotesque spectacle some prisoners were forced to stage. The spectacle of public humiliation. In 53 BCE, in Seleucia, after the crushing defeat at Carrhae, Parthian general Surena orchestrated one of antiquity's cruelest spectacles. Among thousands of captives, he picked a legionary whose face resembled Marcus Licinius Crassus, Rome's fallen commander. They painted his body with bright pigments, clad him in feminine robes and delicate adornments, turning him into a living caricature of the lost leader. At dawn, the city's gates opened for the grotesque parade. The reborn Crassus was led through streets packed with cheering Parthian citizens, mocking the clumsy figure. Behind him, chained legionaries were forced to salute the farce, a gesture blending submission and shame. Each sarcastic applause and mocking laugh elevated the victor's spirits and crushed Roman pride. This show aimed not only to ridicule one man, but the entire Roman war machine. By transforming a soldier into a jester, Surena sent a clear message. Roman invincibility could be undone and its honor reduced to public mockery. Chroniclers like Plutarch recorded the shockwaves that rippled across the ancient world upon hearing of this theatrical humiliation. For the unwilling legionary actor, each step resonated like a dagger to the soul. Garments once symbols of victory became instruments of disgrace. For Rome, news of the parade spread like wildfire, renewing the fear that not even the mightiest empire was safe from downfall. Can you imagine the weight of that mockery? Stay tuned. Next, we'll confront the horror of Germanic rituals. Ritual sacrifices in the Germanic forests. In the dense, gloomy woods of Germania, the anonymous Germanic chief saw captured legionaries not merely as foes, but as living offerings to his war gods. At nightfall, prisoners were stripped of their tattered tunics and bound to naked tree trunks, whose ancient bark seemed to drink in their fear. By torchlight, warriors intoned guttural chants in lost tongues, marking the start of a rite blending sacrifice and triumph. The first cut was ceremonial. Blades stripped flesh slowly to expose entrails, offered to forest spirits as a sign of power beneath time-worn branches. Twisted skulls became chalices for blood libations, forging a pact between the earthly realm and the supernatural. Cleaned and polished tibias and femurs turned into ritual pipes, their discordant notes echoing through roots and failing to drown out the captive's sobs. This ritual was more than murder. It was worship of Rome's destruction. Every drop of spilled blood reinforced the belief that Germanic gods had chosen this moment to punish the invader. Tacitus wrote that such ceremonies aimed to terrorize not only the captives, but also any legionaries who might hear of the horror and hesitate before advancing. As dry leaves closed over the blood-soaked soil, the martyrs' echoes lingered. Each blood-stained trunk stood as a silent altar, a living witness to a cult of vengeance. If you think this represents the height of cruelty, wait to see who still found hope in this grim scene. The rescue of the valued, gold for honor. Amid chaos and barbarity, a glimmer of hope shone for few. High-ranking officers, sons of senators, or soldiers with political ties might see rescue come. Roman envoys risked life and limb, crossing hostile lands, from Germanic plains to Syrian deserts, hauling bags of gold and promises of peace. These makeshift ambassadors bargained with tribal chiefs or Parthian leaders like Surena, offering fortunes in exchange for the freedom of strategically valuable captives. In Carthage, after Carrhae, records note Rome dispatching negotiators laden with chests of denarii to free captured officers. Some prisoners spent months in damp dungeons, hearing the jingle of coins as guards debated offers. Each commander's ransom reaffirmed Rome's image as an empire that never abandons its own. Statues rose in celebration of returns, but only for those of sufficient status. Most legionaries, however, lacked powerful patrons. While some reclaimed their honor, many remained in anonymous graves, buried without name. This contrast exposed Rome's pragmatism, elevating a few as symbols of power while consigning the rest to oblivion. For captives waiting on ransom, each day bred doubt. Would the gold arrive in time, or would dungeon silence be their tomb? The agony of watching comrades go free while remaining chained was torment aplenty, mixing relief and frustration in an emotional whirlwind. Can you picture relief and anguish in the same breath? Now, prepare to see the rescue expeditions that tried to free these men by force. Rescue expeditions and the forgotten others. When coins and diplomacy fell short, Rome turned to force to save its own. Entire legions were dispatched on relief missions. Enemy camps were stormed at dawn, and villages allied to the captors were raided. In 203 BCE, during the Second Punic War, Rome sent an expedition to free prisoners held by Hannibal in Campania. Roman units broke enemy lines and opened escape corridors, recovering hundreds of legionaries in forced marches. On the Germanic frontier, Roman patrols penetrated hostile tribes whenever news of strategic captives reached headquarters. These raids were swift and merciless. Wooden fortresses burned, granaries looted, and prisoners freed before foes could regroup. To outside observers, it proved Rome never abandons its own. But this solidarity had limits. Officers and soldiers with influential sponsors took priority in rescue plans. Others were deemed acceptable losses. Most legionaries without connections vanished into shallow graves or mass burials, their names erased by history's haste, interred on foreign soil without rites or official remembrance. In the end, a captured Roman soldier's fate was decided by a cruel game of prestige and political convenience. Some returned under victorious banners, their stories celebrated in Rome. Others never came home, forgotten as mere wartime statistics. This duality reveals the darker side of an empire that, despite its might, chose who deserved saving. If you Enjoyed this journey through time and want more fascinating stories? Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this video with your friends. That helps us keep bringing you high-quality historical content. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video on ancient Rome and its grand empire.